Dear people watching and listening, Assalamu alaikum. Kindly like and share this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Kindly support me by sending me a super thanks from $2, £2 or €2, or alternatively support me through Patreon. A Short History of the Saracens by Syed Ameer Ali. Start of Chapter 3. Medina. The people of Yathrib received the Prophet ﷺ and his Meccan disciples, who had abandoned home for the sake of their faith, with great enthusiasm, and the ancient name of the city was changed to Madinatun Nabi, the city of the Prophet ﷺ, or shortly Medina, which name it has borne ever since. A mosque was built, made of bricks and earth covered with palm leaves. Muhammad ﷺ himself assisted in the building of this humble place of worship, and there he preached his simple religion, telling the people not only of the glory and beneficence of God, but inculcating strong moral principles. He preached brotherly love, kindness to children, widows and orphans, and gentleness to animals. The Prophet's Charter. At this time, Medina was inhabited by two tribes which had long been at feud with each other. The Arabian Prophet ﷺ abolished all tribal distinctions and grouped the inhabitants of Medina under one generic name, Ansar, or helpers. The people who had followed him from Mecca were called the exiles, or Muhajirin. In the days of which we are speaking, there was no law or order in any city in Arabia. Different factions were at strife with each other, and general lawlessness and confusion prevailed in the peninsula. Muhammad ﷺ applied himself first to the task of introducing order in Medina and organizing the commonwealth upon a proper basis. With this object he issued a charter by which all blood feud was abolished and lawlessness repressed. Equal rights were granted to the Jews, who lived in large numbers in and about Medina, whilst they on their side bound themselves to help the Muslims in defending the city. Muhammad ﷺ was now not only a teacher, but the chief magistrate of a people who had invited him and his disciples into their midst, and had entrusted him with the safety of their city. His duty was to be ever on the watch to suppress sedition and to guard against treachery. The Meccans were much angered with the Medinites for sheltering Muhammad ﷺ and his disciples, whom they considered as revolutionaries, and a conflict between them and the people of Medina was unavoidable. Battle of Badr. The first fight took place in the valley of Badr, a few miles from Medina, where the Meccans were defeated, leaving many prisoners in the hands of the Muslims. These were treated with great kindness in their captivity. 3rd Hijri, 26 April 624 to 15th April 625 after Christ. The second year of the Hijrah would have passed quietly in Medina, but for occasional raids by the Meccans. In the third year, Abu Sufyan, son of Harb, son of Umayyah, the great rival of the Hashemites, with a large army of the Meccans and their allies, entered the Medinite territories. The Muslim force which proceeded to repel the attack was smaller in number. Battle of Uhud. A battle took place at the foot of a hill called Uhud, which resulted in the defeat of the Madinites. The loss of the Meccans, however, was too great to allow them to attack the city, and they retreated to Mecca. The Jews who were settled in and around Medina in strongly fortified villages now began to give trouble. From their position they were a source of constant danger to the little state. Those who lived in the city acted as spies to the Meccans, and frequently by their turbulent and unruly conduct led to brawls and bloodshed. Two of these tribes, the Banu Qurayza and the Banu Nadir, who lived in the suburbs, were therefore expelled. Battle of the Trench. In the 5th year of the Hijrah, the Meccans again invaded Medina with a large army of 10,000 men. To oppose this formidable host, the Muslims could muster only 3,000 men. So they dug a trench under the Prophet's direction, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, round the unprotected quarter of the city, and relied for the safety of the other parts on the Banu Qurayza, a tribe of Jews who possessed several strong fortresses in the vicinity of Medina, towards the south, and with whom they were allied by treaty. The treachery of the Jews. These Jews, however, broke their pledged faith and joined the Meccans in their attack on Medina. The siege lasted a long time, but every effort to storm the city was warded off by the vigilance of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At last the elements seemed to combine against the besieging force. Rain and storm killed their horses, provisions became scanty, and the Meccan army dissolved as it had gathered. The Banu Qurayza. It was considered unsafe to leave the traitorous Banu Qurayza so near the city, as their treachery might at any moment lead to the destruction of Medina. So they were called upon to leave the place. On refusal they were besieged and compelled to surrender at discretion. They made only one condition, that their punishment should be left to the judgment of the Ossite chief, Sa'd bin Mu'az, whose clients they were. This man, a fierce soldier who had been wounded in the attack, and indeed died from his wounds the next day, infuriated by their treacherous conduct, gave sentence that the fighting men should be put to death, and that the women and children should become the slaves of the Muslims. And this sentence was carried into execution. This was a severe punishment according to our ideas, but it was customary according to the rules of war then prevalent. After this Meccan failure, the new religion began to make rapid progress in the peninsula, and tribe after tribe gave up their old evil ways and adopted Islam. The Charter to the Christians. In the 6th year of the Hijrah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam granted to the monks of the monastery of Saint Catherine near Mount Sinai and to all Christians a charter, which is a monument of enlightened tolerance. By it, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam secured to the Christians important privileges and immunities, and the Muslims were prohibited under severe penalties from violating and abusing what was therein ordered. In this charter the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam undertook himself and enjoined on his followers to protect the Christians, to guard them from all injuries, and to defend their churches and the residences of their priests. They were not to be unfairly taxed. No bishop was to be driven out of his bishopric. No Christian was to be forced to reject his religion. No monk was to be expelled from his monastery. No pilgrim was to be detained from his pilgrimage, nor were the Christian churches to be pulled down for the sake of building mosques or houses for the Muslims. Christian women married to Muslims were to enjoy their own religion, and not to be subjected to compulsion or annoyance of any kind on that account. If the Christians should stand in need of assistance for the repair of their churches, or monasteries, or any other matter pertaining to their religion, the Muslims were to assist them. Embassies sent abroad. Muhammad ﷺ also dispatched embassies to the king of Persia and the Byzantine emperor to invite them to accept Islam. The latter received the ambassador with courtesy, whilst the former drove the envoy from his presence with contumely. Another messenger sent to a Christian prince subject to Byzantium, who lived near Damascus, was cruelly murdered. The Jews of Khaybar revolt. In the 7th year, the Jews of Khaybar revolted, but were soon reduced to subjection. Their lands and property were guaranteed to them, with the free practice of their religion, upon payment of a fixed land tax. The Conquest of Mecca. In accordance with a truce concluded with the Meccans, the Muslims visited the Kaaba, the inhabitants vacating their city so as not to come in contact with Muhammad ﷺ and his followers. After 3 days, the Muslims retired to Medina, and the Meccans returned to their homes. Soon after, the Meccans and some of their allies treacherously attacked a tribe in alliance with the Muslims, and killed a large number of them. The injured people applied to the Prophet for redress. The reign of iniquity and oppression had lasted long enough at Mecca. In response to the appeal, he marched 10,000 men against the idolaters. With the exception of a slight resistance from the heads of 2 clans, they entered Mecca almost unopposed. Thus Muhammad ﷺ entered the city which had so cruelly ill-treated him. It lay now completely at his mercy. But in the hour of triumph, every evil suffered was forgotten, every injury inflicted was forgiven, and a general amnesty was extended to the population of Mecca. Only 4 criminals whom justice condemned made up Muhammad's proscription list when as a conqueror he entered the city of his bitterest enemies. The army followed his example and entered quietly and peaceably. No house was robbed, no woman was insulted. Most truly has it been said that through all the annals of conquest, there has been no triumphant entry like unto this one. But the idols of the nation were unrelentingly destroyed. Sorrowfully the idolaters stood round and watched the downfall of the images they worshipped. And then dawned upon them the truth, when they heard the old voice at which they were wont to scoff and jeer, cry as he struck down the idols. Truth has come, and falsehood vanisheth. Verily falsehood is evanescent. How utterly powerless were their gods. The Year of Deputations. The 9th year of the Hijrah is known in Muslim history as the Year of Deputations, in consequence of the large number of embassies which came from all quarters to accept Islam. The principal companions of the Prophet ﷺ and the leading citizens of Medina at his request received these envoys in their houses and entertained them with the time-honored hospitality of the Arabs. On departure, They always received an ample sum for the expenses of the road, with some additional presents corresponding to their rank. A written treaty, guaranteeing the privileges of the tribe, was often granted, and a teacher invariably accompanied the departing guests to instruct the newly converted people in the duties of Islam, and to see that every evil practice was obliterated from their midst. To the teachers whom Muhammad ﷺ sent into the different provinces, he always gave the following injunctions: Deal gently with the people, and be not harsh. Cheer them, and contemn them not. And ye will meet with many people of the book who will question thee, What is the key to heaven? Reply to them, The key to heaven is to testify to the truth of God and to do good work. When the hosts of Arabia came flocking to join his faith, Muhammad ﷺ felt that his work was accomplished, and under the impression of his approaching end, he determined to make a farewell pilgrimage to Mecca. On the 25th of Zulqa'dah, that is 23rd February 632, the Prophet ﷺ left Medina with an immense concourse of Muslims. On his arrival at Mecca, on the 8th of Zulhijjah, 7th March, and before completing all the rites of the pilgrimage, he addressed the assembled multitude from the top of Jabal Arafat in words which yet live in the hearts of all Muslims. The Sermon on the Mount of Arafat. Ye people, listen to my words, for I know not whether another year will be vouchsafed to me, after this year to find myself amongst you. Your lives and property are sacred and inviolable amongst one another until ye appear before the Lord, as this day and this month is sacred for all. And remember ye shall have to appear before your Lord, who shall demand from you an account of all your actions. Ye people, ye have rights over your wives, and your wives have rights over you. Treat your wives with kindness. Verily ye have taken them on the security of God, and made them lawful unto you by the words of God. And your slaves, see that ye feed them with such food as ye eat yourselves, and clothe them with the stuff ye wear. And if they commit a fault which ye are not inclined to forgive, then part from them, for they are the servants of the Lord, and are not to be harshly treated. Ye people, listen to my words, and understand the same. Know that all Muslims are brothers unto one another. Ye are one brotherhood. Nothing which belongs to another is lawful unto his brother, unless freely given out of good will. Guard yourselves from committing injustice. Let him that is present tell it unto him that is absent. Haply he that shall be told may remember better than he who hath heard it. On his return to Medina, he settled the organization of the provinces and tribal communities. Officers were sent to the provinces and to the various tribes for the purpose of teaching the people the duties of Islam, administering justice, and collecting the tithes or zakat. The last days of the Prophet ﷺ were remarkable for the calmness and serenity of his mind, which enabled him, though weak and feeble, to preside at the public prayers until within 3 days of his death. One midnight he went to the place where his old companions were lying in the slumber of death, and prayed and wept by their tombs, invoking God's blessings for his companions resting in peace. He chose Aisha's house, radiyallahu ta'ala anha, close to the mosque, for his stay during his illness, and so long as his strength lasted, took part in the public prayers. The last time he appeared in the mosque he was supported by his two cousins, Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu and Fazl, the son of Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu. After the usual praises and hymns to God, he addressed the multitude thus: Muslims, if I have wronged any one of you, here I am to answer for it. If I owe aught to anyone, all I may happen to possess belongs to you. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam then prayed and implored heaven's mercy for those present, and for those who had fallen in the persecution of their enemies, and recommended to all his people the observance of religious duties, and the practice of a life of peace and goodwill, and concluded with the following words of the Quran: The dwelling of the other life we will give unto them who do not seek to exalt themselves on earth, or to do wrong, for the happy issue shall attend the pious. After this, Muhammad's sallallahu alaihi wasallam strength rapidly failed. At noon on Monday, 12th of Rabiul Awwal, 11 Hijri, that is 8 June 632 after Christ, whilst praying earnestly in whisper, the spirit of the great Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took flight to the blessed companionship on high. During the 10 years Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam presided over the Commonwealth of Islam, a great change had come over the character of the Arab people. By the appointment of delegates to the different tribes and cities, with powers to decide internal as well as tribal disputes, the ancient system of private vendetta was put an end to, and an impetus was given to trade and commerce. The style of living and mode of dress underwent a great change, especially among women. The reckless freedom of hedonism was abandoned, and manners became decorous, almost austere. Gambling and drunkenness were forbidden. Before this, there had been no privacy in houses. From this time, it became customary to have special apartments for women. End of chapter 3.